Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar all about lessons learned for ZEDpods. We have a number of people on this panel which I'm really excited about today, and we'll do proper introductions in a moment. But I'm Jessie Wilde and I'm from the Bristol Housing Festival, and just in case any of you weren't aware, this webinar is part of 3 weeks worth of webinars and events and online content that the Bristol Housing Festival is pulling together for our virtual Expo 2020. So this year everything's gone digital, everything's gone virtual, and we're doing a series of webinars and various different videos. So if you go onto our YouTube channel, if you've missed any of the webinars, if you've missed any of the one-to-one interviews that we've been conducting, you'll be able to see all of those all up there for your viewing pleasure at any time. So do check out our YouTube channel. And if you have a look on our website as well, you'll see all the other events that are upcoming. We've got 2 more this afternoon and a few more next week as well. So do take a look at the lineup on our website. Now, we should have most people, I think, through the virtual doors, as it were, now. So it is my great pleasure to hand over to Liz, who is going to chair our event this morning. Thank you, Liz.
Hi everyone, a huge welcome from me. My name is Liz Zeidler. I'm Chief Exec of something called the Centre for Thriving Places based here in Bristol, and my main role here today is to chair this conversation, and it is very much a conversation rather than a formal presentation, and I hope it'll be all the better for that. A few practicalities before we throw ourselves into that conversation. First, it's important to let you all know that we are live streaming, so we are currently online and this webinar is being recorded, so not only do we all need to behave ourselves, but also you'll all be able to see this or share it with others afterwards. As Jessie just mentioned, but for those of you who at the time were still walking through that virtual door, this is part of an amazing session of festival of the next few weeks. So please do sign up to more of these events at bristolhousingfestival.org events. You can also, of course, shout about this on social media. The more people that know about the innovations that are going on here and elsewhere, the better. And the Twitter handle is @Bristol_HF. We have got a really incredible panel here today, who I will introduce in a moment. But this is also about you and your questions and your thoughts about this project. So please have a look at the bottom of the screen, and there's a Q&A box there. There's not a chat box, as you might have experienced from other meetings, but a Q&A box. So please put any questions throughout the whole session. You can add questions there and we'll try and pull them out. We won't probably be able to answer all of them, but we will pull out some themes from that and put those to the panel after we've had our initial conversation. So please do get involved so this can be a full conversation with you. There's also importantly a report being published about the lessons learned from this project, and that will be out, I've been told, early next week. There you are, that's a promise. Early next week, and there'll be loads of social media around that, so please do look out for that as well. Some introductions. Everyone here has had a really kind of crucial role in this amazing Hope Rise project. And we're not going to have a long series of presentations, but the conversation is intended to kind of uncover why this project matters, what it can teach us about a new way of thinking about building houses, not just homes, and also, communities, not even just homes. Building homes, not just houses, and communities as well. You'll hear from everyone, but just so you know who's here, I'm going to give you a quick name call for each person, and then we'll dive in. So we've got Jessie Wilde, who you've already heard from, and she's one of the key drivers behind the Housing Festival and behind the making of the Hope Drive project happen from its very earliest stages. Julian Higson is here from Bristol City Council, Director of Housing. We've got Rianne, who's the Operations and Technical Director at ZEDpods. And Ben Rensilvi from the YMCA, the Director of YMCA in Bristol. We've also got Jacqueline Miller, the Commercialisation Manager at Bristol City Council, Mary Bennell, who's the Director of Southwest Procurement Alliance, also our sponsor, so extra thanks for that, and Paul Plum, Construction Project Manager at Bristol City Council. So as you can see, we've got everyone here from the earliest seeds of the project through to actually putting that building up in the first place and making sure it's at the very first stages of creating a community there. And together we're going to try and tell this story beyond those practicalities, thinking about this very new way of imagining, procuring, building, designing these homes and this community. before we dive in, just so you know why on earth I'm here, well, it's a few years now that the team at Bristol Housing Festival approached my organisation, the Centre for Thriving Places, to say, we're planning to build this small new community, but we don't just want to measure the number of residents, the number of jobs created, the amount of carbon saved, all of which, of course, are incredibly vital elements of this project and important things that are being measured. But also they said, we want to measure the impact of this project on the people who are living there and on the communities around it. What impact is it having on their well-being, on their life chances and their hopes? So our work overall is about trying to help local places all across the UK and well beyond to shift the compass towards what really matters to people. And I think that's really important, to help measure and understand what are the conditions for people, places and planet to thrive. So we've worked with the team, this team and others, to design an evaluation based on our very well used happiness pulse tool to understand the impact of this project on the lives of those it touches. What will change, for instance, in terms of their sense of belonging or hope or trust? What will people's behavior, how will people's behaviors change to help to improve their mental and physical health? How does the space created in Hope drive? How does it drive a connection between the residents, but also more importantly, and perhaps more broadly, into the community in which they're now a part? And these and other elements of their well-being are really, really, really vital, because a lack of well-being, we often forget, has an impact not just on ourselves, on our own personal lives, but also on our communities, on our towns, on our families, and on society at large. Some of the kind of really deep-rooted problems that we face in the world have a root cause based in a real lack of well-being or a lack of focus on the well-being of people. So I'm incredibly delighted that we've had a tiny part to play in this project, which is really trying to put that front and center. So let's plow straight into this conversation and understand. I'm going to come to you first, Jessie. I don't think I warned you that, but I wanted to start with you because I think you and the team at Bristol Housing Festival, obviously you're not the landowners, you're not the housing constructors or the commissioners. You haven't been in that kind of, what we often see as the powerful role in these sort of spaces, but you have had this really vital role in seeing through this vision from those very earliest seeds. Can you give us a little taste, and that's what it's going to be, of those early seeds, the idea, the ambitions that you and the team have for it? And I think, really excitingly, considering the name of the project, what are some of the greatest hopes you have for this project?
Yes, thanks, Liz. Yeah, of course. I think it started, I think, really with the inception of the Bristol Housing Festival back in October 2018. We hosted the launch event down on Waterfront Square. We had 6 different modular houses popped up on the waterfront that was free for anyone to come and have a little look around. And one of those homes was ZEDpods. So ZEDpods and Rehan were involved in that very, very first exhibition. They were involved in showcasing what a ZEDpod was, the way that it was low carbon, and the kind of the options of how you can build in a much more sustainable way. And so our hopes and our ambitions, I suppose, of the Housing Festival have always been that we don't just want to be a talk shop, we don't just want to be a showcase. We didn't really get into this to just do events, honestly. So it was much more about how do we take that forward and actually help and enable these projects to find feet in Bristol. So we work very closely with Bristol City Council, and obviously these homes are Bristol City Council homes, and our role has been very much, how can we help unblock and unlock problems? How can we help bring in different people where necessary to see the project come to its fulfillment, really? And our hope has always been, yes, looking at construction innovation, but also thinking about how do we innovate in a way that really, as you said so eloquently earlier, around people, and how do we build communities where people really thrive? And so that was also part of the conversation where Ben Sylvie comes in with the YMCA as well. So very much our hope, as you said, is about, can we have been part of something that proves that you can build homes that are sustainable and build really, really healthy, resilient communities.
Really powerful stuff. Honestly, I'm so excited about this. And I think that really leads me straight to you, Julian, just to give you a quick heads up. I think, we are in Bristol very lucky to have the housing festival, and that's not me just trying to suck up to Jessie here. I think we really are, because of that kind of capacity to really help something find its feet. I think that's quite a powerful role that we often forget is really important. But also, of course, you know, Jessie could have been in another city and banging on a very, very closed door, and we've been lucky that City Council has absolutely not been a closed door to this innovative approach. So Julian, you know, nothing would have happened here without the land and funding and permissions and all sorts of things that you and the council have supported. I think, you know, again, without blowing people's trumpet, I think it's been very courageous and ambitious of you to take this line. You could have gone down the much more traditional line that so many people do. What do you think this project, what do you think this project is bringing to the city, and what might it mean for how we think about housing in the future? What are you most excited about in terms of the city for this?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. I mean, I think I think as a city council, we've always been keen not just to support the housing festival itself, but as Jessie says, I think if we're going to be anything, it's got to make a real difference to the people of the city. So it's got to result in real developments and real places where people can live and thrive. And we want to play our part in that. And initially, that a lot of that was through land, being able to provide land for some of the schemes to go ahead. But at one point, we got the opportunity to step in as landlord on this scheme, which I jumped at. When I first joined Bristol, I went down to it was just about the same time as the expo, and I went down to that and was absolutely blown away by what I saw there. And the idea to be a part of that as a landlord, I think, is massive. So I think there are a couple of reasons why we would want to get involved in this. I think as local authorities, we're now starting to build the next generation of council housing, and I think we need to be bold. There's absolutely more than one way. Traditional development does have a part to play in it, but also so does innovation and modular development. And it brings more than just modular development and new homes to the city. It brings different style of jobs. It brings different opportunities. It brings homes that are often of a very good eco standard, that are designed with some of the users in mind. And it also fits with some of our residents. Our residents in council housing are changing slightly. We have a number of people nowadays, often coming in a bit younger, often coming in with more support needs. We're widening our base of residents. And then, so again, to be able to be involved in something where we're basically looking at move on accommodation for people who've been in some form of vulnerability over the years, and to be able to then work with YMCA to be able to help a distinct client group, I think again is more of what we want to do. So some bespoke solutions, innovation, and I think we want to lead. We want to show what the new face of council housing can be in the UK. And I think it's schemes like this, as well as traditional development. Schemes on this small scale, but we're also now, as a result, on the back of having done this, we're now also getting involved in some volumetric modular schemes as well as a local authority, again in partnership with the Housing Festival. And so I think it's just a really exciting time. And, you know, I'm spending a lot of my time these days encouraging other and helping other local authorities to kind of do the same.
Great, thank you so much, Julian. I really hope we've got time to come back to what some of those longer term plans are in terms of scaling this, because, you know, it's such an exciting innovation. In terms of innovation, we've been hearing, you know, how everyone was blown away, I think, by that initial setup at the waterfront a few years ago. I'm going to come to you, Rehan, about, you know, we're hearing little snippets. So for those of us, you know, there'll be some people listening in who know all about this project, many others who really don't. Can you give us a sense of why everyone's saying this is a very innovative way of constructing, what it offers both people and the planet in the longer term? Can you give us a little bit of a sense of what is the innovation here, so we know what we're talking about?
Thank you very much. Yeah, there's quite a lot of different innovations in how we approach how we build, and also the levels of quality and levels of environmental performance that we do. So all these houses are what we call under the SAP Energy EPCs would be A107 to 109, which means that they're generating more energy than what they're consuming over the course of the year, and they're actually offsetting their carbon emissions over the course of the year. We only use very sustainable building materials, so there's no PIR, PU or petrochemical-based foam insulations in there. It's all natural stone wool and glass mineral wool fibres in there, which is all A-rated for fire. The type of construction is built in a factory, So we do about 90% of the work in the factory, and there's about 10 to 15% of the work done on site. So we put the foundations in. They go in very, very quickly, a very light foundation system, which can, there's quite a lot of innovation in there because we want to do as little disturbance in the ground as possible. Then we have a raised platform that enables us to bring land that's perhaps not used for housing in the past or has a dual land use back into use to develop for housing. So in the Chalks Road scheme, the car park will stay in operation as a public car park. The residents are not going to have allocated parking in there, and the houses will be built above. So there's a lot of insulation, sound insulation and attenuation that goes into the buildings that we do in order to be make very, very high quality, lovely houses to live in. And when you actually go into the scheme and you look in the houses, you have that sort of nesting in the trees feel, which gives a very nice outlook and aspect. And it's a great location to be building housing in, because you've got the park there, you've got the local shops there, you've got a lot of great independence on that high street, as well as having the two sort of main supermarkets within walking distance. So everything is there and within walking distance. So not just the low carbon or the innovation side from the energy consumption point of view, which is very, very innovative, for the super insulation, from the high levels of air tightness, but also from the location, in fact, that we're bringing into play different forms of hard standing or different forms of land use, while still maintaining that original land use, and hopefully bringing more additional business to the local independents on the high street, and hoping help support that. And then by sort of designing the car out of the development for the residents, that sort of helps again improve their carbon environmental footprint. So sort of lots of very, very different aspects. And then to provide it and to combine it with the social housing aspects, with working with Julian and with Ben with the YMCA, to help build that community in there and that community infrastructure around the low carbon ethos and the lifestyle, and the fact that this is something a little bit different. To bring all that together really, really focuses quite the level of innovative thought that goes into delivering a project such as this.
That's absolutely fascinating. I really, really, really love that. I love the idea that this building is generating more energy than it's using, not just this, maybe I'm stretching this, but not just in terms of carbon and electrical energy, but actually it feels to me from everything people are saying that it's generating, human energy and social energy, and it's generating something really a sort of, a real buzz around it because of the way it's been designed. Ben, I'm going to come to you next, because we talk about not just when I was thinking about what to say today, I was thinking I need to really not fall into the cliche of saying it's more than bricks and mortar, because of course, brilliantly, this has got almost no bricks and mortar as far as I understand it. But we know that what's really, really innovative here is not just what is being built, but also the community that is being built. And I know that you're very passionate about all sorts of elements about that, not just, what housing affordability means or accessibility means, but also how you design in community building into a project like this, and who has access to housing, and in what kind of quality. Can you give us a sense of your role, I think again from the early days, in ensuring that this is truly innovative on a social level as well as on an environmental one?
I think from our point of view, we were really interested in someone just brought me a cup of tea. That's good timing, thanks. The thing from our point of view was that we wanted to create a place where young people really belonged. So our kind of strapline as the YMCA is that young people, we build communities where young people can belong, contribute and thrive. And so we had been working with young people in our hostel for a couple of years, which we opened in 2018. And we had people who really thrived where we were. There was a sense of community in the building. They were mixing with all kinds of people, it wasn't just all homeless young people together, there were travellers. And so we wanted to try and move that model on, that when people left us, they also had somewhere to live that had an intention around community. And I think sometimes we think about when we build new housing, we sort of build community into it as a kind of architectural device, as a kind of way of, where we put the houses, where we have green space, which I think is great, but I think it's limited. And I think we were really interested to see how we could then have a kind of intention of community that was embodied in some people living there. So we were excited to be able to recruit some community builders who will live in. So four young people again who will live in the 2-bed houses there, and they will be there to act as good neighbours, to catalyse community, to bring the people that live there together, but also to then promote to the people who are kind of living there, the idea of getting involved in their community outside as well. So what's happening in the community around Hope Rise, and we think that's just a really exciting model. So we've got kind of genuinely affordable homes to young people. We've got excellent quality housing, but we've also got the young people living there who have been vulnerable, who have struggled with some stuff in life, who have the opportunity to be part of a group of people who will kind of become lifelong friends and a network of support.
It's really interesting that you're doing that at this particular point in the extraordinary history of our society, where the notion of community building and the importance of belonging and community has probably never been more on people's minds and lips. So it'll be very interesting to see that arc coming out of this particular period. Jacqueline, I'm just going to come briefly to you, if I can, around you. I know you do a lot around the sort of commissioning side of this, but also I think you've got a particular interest in this project around social value. How do you think this fits into that kind of very positive shift I think we're seeing in some local authorities around the importance of social value, as well as alongside economic and environmental value?
I think what we've seen with this project, Liz, is a real flip on our usual processes. So my bit's the boring bit. Is usually around what's the process that's needed, what boxes do we need ticked, how do we evaluate different bids coming in, and how do we award the contract, and how do we monitor the delivery and performance of that contract. In Bristol, we're really moving at pace around embedding social value in our practice. And for me, that means delivering community benefit with any and all contracts that we deliver. When we award grants, when we enter into land agreements, we're looking at what is the additionality that we can drive through our buying power, and our, what benefit can be delivered back to our communities. So what we've seen in this project, and what I'm hoping that we can start to replicate on other schemes, is looking from the end. What is the outcome that we want to deliver? What are the key stages and partners that we need to enable that? And really the starting point on this project was the community. It was the engagement with the community to understand what they needed and how we could ensure that when people do move into these homes, that they are an active part of these communities. So it's really exciting for me, Liz, because where we've done a lot of work in Bristol around looking at what is social value in particular, and how do we start to embed social value metrics around some of the environmental aspects that Rehan touched on, and some of the sustainability, and looking at the whole life costs and understanding what value is and value for money is. What we've done is actually started from the end. What do we need? And how do we achieve that in a safe and compliant way that satisfies regulations and there's transparency? But what we've done is gone beyond that, and we're starting to be really brave and courageous around what are the outcomes, what is the impact, and what is the difference. Because what we do know is we've done things differently in the past, different processes, we've called them differently, we've outsourced and insourced and co-designed, but actually what's the impact? What is the change that we're seeing for the people that live in these units? And this is an exciting piece of work that we're doing with you and also with Ben around understanding what we call post-occupancy. When people live in these homes, what is the impact for them? And that's a really exciting thing that we're already seeing emerge from this scheme. And that's the bit that I'm hoping that we can continue to work in collaboration to replicate, not just in Bristol, but I know we've got some other colleagues in other local authorities, as Julian touched on, that are really interested in how we make this a reality, not only for the people that live there, but for the community around them.
It's absolute music to my ears, to be honest with you. I mean, a lot of our work is exactly that. Let's shift from outputs, bums on seat type counting, to outcomes. Really, really important. And also that powerful notion that, begin with the end in mind, that if you can see where you want to be, what kind of community you want, then start planning exactly around that. And I think it's really, really powerful. And there are, because we work and advise people all over the world on this, I think you should take credit for how much you're putting this into action. There's quite a lot of people talking about this, but actually I think this is even though it's quite a small project, it's a really powerful project to show that shift from a lot of good words to actually delivering on some of this sort of stuff. Mary, don't worry, Paul, I haven't forgotten you. But Mary, I'm just building on that notion of sort of procuring for social value. It's quite interesting, isn't it? The procurement piece. I've been shouting at local authorities for years about the fact they forget about the power of procurement. You know, the power of procurement to decide where money goes. Jacqueline used the words investment and value and all those sorts of things, and we often use those words just purely in terms of short-term economics. Are we investing in this, or we get some short-term cash back? But actually this procurement process with the social value in mind has been very different from that, hasn't it? It's about really understanding investing in a very different type of value that is much broader and probably longer than traditional. Do you want to give us a little sense of what that means in terms of both this project, but also why that should influence procurement more broadly?
Yes, thank you very much, Liz. I think being involved in this project and being able to offer the procurement solution for it is really great for us. I mean, our strapline is building better homes and communities, and this is one of the projects that actually exemplifies that. Looking at the outcomes, I think procurement and social value outputs from procurement has been a discussion point for a very, very long time, and I think current circumstances, people are looking far more at the quality of what's delivered and, the quality of the space. So all these matters have come to the fore within this project, and the post build, the evaluation report. It'd be fascinating to see what some of the feedback from the residents there are. In terms of social value outputs, I think one of the things that we are so impressed with is what Bristol City Council's doing. They have their social value toolkit and the outputs from that, and certainly that's something that we have many companies on our frameworks, including ZEDpods, and it's for them beginning to focus on the outputs and the outcomes. I think there was an interesting report recently from the Institute of Directors. It's not so much the outputs, how many people are being trained through the project, how many communities you're supporting, but the long-term outcome benefits that brings to it. So that's something that we're really focusing on at the moment, and talking to the providers on our frameworks about how they can meet those aspirations of the client-side organisations. We're actually doing a webinar in a couple of weeks with the Social Value Portal and somebody from Plymouth City Council to really up the game around social value and the benefits that procurement and spending, considerable amounts of money in a construction delivery process. Some of those benefits have to go into the communities where those projects are being delivered.
Absolutely, and it's as I say, it's a real shift that's happening around the world. That New Zealand get all the headlines of having a well-being budget where no money is allowed to be spent unless it can demonstrate its impact on people's lives now and for generations to come. I mean, that's a powerful old shift, and it is largely about procurement. It's what government budgets are for. They're procuring things. So, I think it's a really exciting shift that's happening. Paul, I'm going to bring you in here now, but I'm also going to invite Rihan and probably Julian, if you want to leap in and make this a little bit more discursive, if we can. This is a very different way of thinking about construction. The whole modern methods of construction and off-site builds, etc. What are some of the challenges you've encountered as a landlord and a council around that? But what do you think this offers? Back to my obsession with the name of this project of hope. What hope do you think this offers for city planners, for self builds, for all sorts of different ways of looking at social housing and generally our housing crisis that most places around the country are facing? What have been the real challenges and opportunities that you've seen in this project, Paul?
Basically, there's a few challenges. I was introduced to the project in January 20. So obviously it had a planning consent at that stage, and we had to, get the ground running, so to speak. And there was lots of things where we would take a long time generally in terms of our governance and process, which we needed to speed up. Things such as agreeing, signing and sealing of contracts, raising orders, and also monitoring that through the approval process and actually who we needed to chase at any one time. So it was basically it was speeded up. It was a fast project in terms of all those procedural things that you had to do. And it was how we were going to sort of manage the speed of that project, but also put in place measures to achieve that. You know, generally on a traditional project, progress meetings would be either once every 4 weeks. This needed to be revised to 2 weeks, so every 2 weeks. You know, there was things like identifying all the internal stakeholders, communication strategies, plans, things like that. Also, the consultation with the internal stakeholders in some aspects of the scheme. There was a lot of people to consult in terms of closing the existing car park to allow impact modular ZEDpods to get on there and start the build. Details of refuse collection. You know, are the planners happy that that's how it's going to be collected? Are the refuse collectors or Bristol Waste happy with the method of that? And those things are critical. So really, for the first 2 weeks of the project, I spent just collating all the information, trying to identify all the risks, and those were reviewed on a weekly basis. So yeah, that was my starting point, really.
Speed is both a blessing and a challenge, I think I'm hearing as a headline there. Rehan, you are assuming doing a lot of this work right across the board. Do you have anything to add to Paul's thoughts there about some of the, why does this new method of construction matter? And in what role do you see it playing in the future of particularly social housing, but housing in general?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting time to see modular building come to the forefront of construction, because we're faced with a housing crisis. We're faced with needing to build homes quickly and need to look at different ways of how we deliver those homes, especially with the types of people within the industry we use and the types of technologies that we use in terms of the environmental perspective, in terms of the construction perspective, in terms of the construction skills shortages, and in terms of the actual housing demand and need and the types of land we bring back into use for housing. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to go on that side to bring all those together. But just to echo what Paul was saying, communication is very key. And a lot of what we've learned from the beginnings parts of this process, especially how do you get into a contract? How do you manage the subtleties and the differences between a JCT for a normal traditional build, for a JCT contract for a modular build, which changes how the payments are done and changes how we actually build and actually bill for a project such as this. And that can be, unless you have sort of your legal department, your procurement department, and multiple stakeholders across the board involved very, very early on, some things can come as a bit of a shock later on, and that can sort of hold up on the contracts and the delivery and the signing side a bit later. I think that's quite key, and we've got some really, really good learnings from that side as well. And then on the, on the actual delivery, doing something with MMC, which we're trying to get away from that term, because this is just a different way of building homes that are high quality, permanent homes, have got the longevity that you'd expect with any traditional build, just built in a factory with high levels of quality control. We've got the ISO standards within the factory and the procurement methods to ensure that quality throughout the build. We deliver those as much as what we can do in the factory, and then manage the site works at the end. And hopefully that leads to a higher quality build. We aim for 0 defects at factory gate, and we aim to hand over the building in a very, very high quality fashion.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, language is very powerful, isn't it? Just saying it's modern methods of construction makes it sound scary, and it really doesn't need to be. I think it's really, really exciting. I'm going to come back to you, Ben, but I'm also going to invite Jessie to leap in this space if she would like to as well. But what I really love about this project is it is about houses, but as we've said, it's about houses really intentionally being designed as homes and as communities. Can you tell us a little bit more? You gave us a little teaser earlier about, can you tell us a little bit more about the role of these community builders in there, why you and others have been so rightly convinced we need to invest in that, what that can teach us, but also a little bit about how you've been working to ensure that the right residents are in there, the people who most need homes are getting homes in this place. And again, what can this teach us more broadly about how we go about social housing, as it's euphemistically called?
I mean, that's a massive set of questions. I think in terms of the role of the community builders, I think we've rested on the kind of concept that these are good neighbours, essentially, proactive good neighbours. They're not support workers. They're not people who will be managing tenancies, who will have any of those kind of legal or even kind of moral responsibility for the other people that live there. They will be proactive good neighbours, and we talk about investing in them, and our investment in them is training and encouragement and support. You know, actually, these are volunteers who will live in and pay the same rent as everyone else. This is not a kind of a paid group of people, but they are people who will you know, make sure that everyone's accounted for, and that they'll check in on their neighbours. And we've set some values in Hope Rise as well. So it's not just about the community builders doing stuff, you know, and everyone else just sort of being a recipient of that. The idea is we create some mutuality. So in our values, we talk about the fact that if you live there, you'll be up for receiving help, but also up for giving help to the other people that live there. So, but it's a bit of a new thing. You know, we've got to see how it plays out and what will happen. It's not something that we've done before. We've seen similar models around the place, but it's not a kind of established thing that we know exactly how it's going to play out. What we know is we've got currently 3 out of the 4 community builders recruited, who are all brilliant people, who've all got experience working with young people, who've all got experience and enthusiasm around community. And a little bit the role will play out according to their strengths and their interests, and the strengths and interests of the young people that move in alongside them as well. So that's that role, and I've forgotten the rest of your question.
Something about the recruitment of the residents and how you feel this, even though it's a tiny, very particular project, how you feel this could support a very different way of looking at this sort of process in the longer term.
Yeah, so the key thing for us was about creating a mixed and balanced community, which I know is a phrase that's used a lot. In our hostel, which I've talked about before, we created a backpackers hostel, which was for, you know, backpackers, travellers, tourists, but also housed homeless young people. And the idea was that that would create a kind of sense of anonymity and non-stigmatisation. So we want the same in Hope Rise. So we're recruiting, you know, people from Home Choice, people who have been through the homelessness pathway, and they'll all be at least partly in education or employment. So there's kind of a sense of purpose to what they're doing already. But that mix is really crucial. And what we don't want to do is create a kind of a ghetto where, you know, there might be some negative behaviours that kind of get reinforced by each other. In terms of kind of what this means for other developments, I think it's about that intention. And I don't think we can rely on community building just to be about how we physically build. I don't think we can just rely on architects, as brilliant as architects are, to kind of design spaces which, you know, just magically bring community about. You have to have people who have a vision for being alongside their neighbours and want to be involved and want to get to know each other and want to volunteer. And so I think as we build new housing, it might not be about having living community builders, but it certainly is about developers and local authorities investing in community infrastructure, community facilities, people that will champion the kind of the growth and the flourishing of the people that live in a place.
I really like the idea of how intentionally you're valuing the role of community building, and it'd be interesting to see how we could roll that out in all sorts of, you know, in my street, in your street, in, you know, how could we do it much more intentionally. Jessie, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that word intention is really key. I think when you're looking at building housing, when we're talking about even the housing crisis, it's a phrase that we, you know, people bandy around all the time, but we need to be really clear when we're talking about housing crisis. We're talking about a lack of availability of homes. We're also talking about an affordability issue, and in some cases we're talking about a lack of suitable housing for certain groups of people as well. It is broad. So actually it is this intentionality. Actually, what's the objective? You know, even the conversations around procurement, it needs to be objective-led procurement. The procurement has to be leading towards something that's actually going to solve an issue and being really aware of what are the needs of the city, what are we facing as a city, what are we facing as a city together that we can actually together find the solutions for. This is very much our housing crisis. Collectively as a city, we are facing challenges together, whether or not we're going to own them personally. Together we are facing those challenges, and so we do need to be led by the need to find those solutions. And I think Bristol City Council, you know, it is leading the way with social value, its own social value policy and its measurement of that. But I think that really helps. So as we're looking to, you know, as Bristol City Council look to scale, to replicate, to do similar projects in different places with different providers to suit different people, actually it is looking at what's the objective, what are we aiming for, and making sure that we're all aligned around those goals so that we can achieve the aim.
Definitely. And I'm going to ask you just to leap in there, Julian, if I can, just, what are the city council's plans to sort of, take the lessons learned from this as quickly as possible? As often people wait to the end of some project and you've got huge evaluations to do anything, but there must already be lessons that you're learning and starting to look to spread elsewhere. Can you give us a quick taster of that? And then we're going to come to the questions that you've been asking to the public.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there are lessons to be learned, and obviously we've got the lessons learned report that will come out next week, so we're learning quickly from that, and we've learned a lot already. When we talk about innovation, we sometimes, we think about the product being innovative, but as colleagues have already said so far today, actually you need innovation across a range of areas: social value, procurement, legal, finance, etc., to make something like this happen, because every aspect of it is new. And the first few schemes that you do are going to be more painful before you have that learning. I think that's almost inevitable. So, I mean, we're fortunate that we've been given some Innovate UK funding as well as through Bristol Housing Festival and other partners, which is going to evaluate about nine schemes that are happening across the city or about to happen across the city, so that we can try and develop some sort of toolkit to make the delivery of modular schemes happen, and to prove, what they give back in terms of social value, in terms of efficiency, in terms of energy efficiency. And that's something that we'll be able to share across the country, ideally. So there is that rapid learning, but I think you've also got to back yourself. I think, I think we've got to try and create great places. And we've got to try and innovate. So, I think we're already in procurement and in advanced stages of planning with 2 or 3 other larger scale providers and some smaller scale providers to do both some experimental and some volumetric delivery. And I think we have to be bold and go ahead and do that, I think, and continue to learn as we deliver that. And I think, to come back, just to kind of finish on that from what other people were saying, we've learned this year, and I think one thing that's really important is, just because there's a housing crisis doesn't mean that any housing will do. It's rather the opposite. We need to be thinking about what the future of housing does, and this year has shown us that in terms of what can be, what the restrictions are on high density living in terms of a pandemic, what can be achieved when communities work together, in terms of what's happened across some of our streets and our places, especially in Bristol, where people have come together. And we need to be building that into the housing of the future, and that influencing the design and the delivery and the way we let, occupy and manage the properties of the future. So that's what I think we need to keep learning as we go on with this. Yeah, we need to keep doing it and not stop, but we need to be learning those lessons as we go along.
Yeah, and I'm really, really impressed, actually, particularly in light of things people have been saying about the fact that speed is quite a challenging aspect of this project, because it has happened pretty quickly. But actually, often speed is the enemy of learning. And I think you're taking a very iterative, quite agile approach to learning and sharing that learning quite quickly. So I'm excited this report's coming out next week, and that you're already starting to share some of this learning with other places, because I think that's going to be key. It'd be tragic if you've done all this amazing stuff and then other places and other parts of the city weren't able to get involved. I'm going to go to a few of the questions that we've had coming in. Thank you, everybody. Do carry on asking questions. I will do my best to ask them and look at the new ones as they come in. There's some quite kind of technically ones, but I think they can probably be answered reasonably quickly. I'm not sure by who, but just leap in, around things like insurance and mortgages for some of these types of builds that actually, if other people want to be doing some of these things, have you had huge challenges around being either able to insure or mortgage, or would you have such problems for this type of method of construction, both at an individual level or at a social housing level? Who wants to leap in on that?
I'm happy to start. So we've worked very closely with a lot of the mortgage providers. When we were building out of cross-laminated timber, we worked quite closely with Aviva to make sure that they were happy with what we were doing. Again, because a lot of what we do and is very innovative in the UK is perhaps not quite so innovative or pushing leading edge innovation on the continent. So some of the larger sort of Swiss-based and other based insurance companies are probably the better place to go, because they understand that what we're still calling modern methods of construction, they are calling construction. And then we've worked very hard and with Mark Farmer and the team that's pushed forwards that modernise and die or die sort of part of the industry, which has helped us focus on who we work with, the lenders, with the warranty providers, to make sure we've got a range of warranty providers. And now sort of NHBC have stepped up as well with the launch of their NHBC Accepts as well, and in terms of the BOPAS Build Off-Site Property Insurance Scheme. And all of these are now combining and looking at these sort of infrastructural and enabling factors that go behind doing something differently within the building industry, are now coming to the fore at the right point in time, so that hopefully within a very shorter period of time, what is now considered innovation gets considered more standardized.
Yeah, and I think that might slightly, you might still be this right person for this next question as well, Rianne. Another question I feel quite strongly about myself, because I think is often ignored in these sort of things, is thinking about the supply chain. That often people talk about something being very sustainable, or other great claims, but it's like it obviously depends where those materials have come from, and how they're put together, etc. So how do you and the same for some of those of you who are in the procurement space, the particular question was talking about things like stone or different things that might be involved. Where have they come from? How have they been quarried? That kind of thing. How do you assess the impact of your supply chain, either at the sharp end where you are, Rianne, or at the procurement end? How are we accounting for that as a city?
The supply chain is very, very important. I think one of the things that will come out of the Innovate project that we're doing is quite a lot of the carbon accounting within the supply chain. We try and source as much as we can do in the UK, because supply chains are our partners. They're as much as part of what we do and we develop in terms of our products and homes as what we do in terms of develop and build and design. If we don't have the right supply chain partners in there, it can get problematic. And we've shown that with stuff that we've delivered over the course of the COVID pandemic, and to keep going, to make sure that we've got those materials there. I mean, things like British chips and plasterboard and stuff we can source in the UK. We try and source as much as the insulation we can in the UK, mainly from Wales. We try and source as much of the steelwork that we use from the UK, and again, mainly from Wales. When we're doing using cross-laminated timber, at the moment we don't make cross-laminated timber in the UK, so we have to import that from Austria. The upside of doing it that way is that they're very good sustainably managed forests. It's quite a closed loop manufacturing process. So all of the waste timber products, as well as the forest being managed, the waste timber products are used to make wood pellets to supply CHP, so combined heat and power, which helps provide some of the energy required to actually manufacture, which again reduces the carbon footprint at source and helps to offset some of those transport miles as well. But all of this, I think, is going to come out very, very shortly when we get when we really push that life cycle carbon accounting forwards, and as part of the Innovate project. And I think that's going to be really, really interesting. And you'll see that because of the way we offset the energy production, so that we're producing more energy than what our buildings are actually consuming, we should be paying back some of that carbon debt, and how close we get to carbon neutrality would be quite interesting as well to see and to demonstrate with this live scheme. We're also doing a lot of post-occupancy evaluation surveys on this in terms of heat, so temperature, humidity, CO build-up within and lux within there, and it's quite an interactive app-based portal for the residents to actually interact with us and to say, look, I feel too hot, I feel too cold, and to work out what's going on there based against what the sensors are showing. So I think that again is going to be very, very key, because it will help show that what we're doing is as designed is what's performing, as built is what's performing, post-occupancy 6 months, 12 months down the line, and how easy. We've done a lot of work in making these buildings very easy to live in, and it'd be very interesting to sort of get that post-occupancy evaluation to show that what we've done to make it an easy building, and sort of lazy environmentalism, so to speak, in terms of what we provide in the energy systems that we use, really is working and providing what we wanted to.
Jacqueline, I don't know what you wanted to add to that, but there's also an additional question that you could probably add in as well, which is around how will the learning from this feed into next iterations of the social value portal? So is it a kind of looped learning or not just a linear one?
Very much, Liz. It's a really emerging space. And what we've done in Bristol is work closely with a national task force to help develop the social value portal's framework of themes, outcomes and measures. So that's what we use in day-to-day procurement in terms of our contracts and the KPIs that sit within our contracts. What we've done with this project has gone beyond that and looked at some of the measures we can use around some of the more innovative environmental solutions that Rehan has mentioned. So we've got some building blocks around the national framework that's very credible and tangible. We've got some new metrics that we're looking at across the 9 schemes that Julian mentioned, but then we'll also work with Ben and the team to look at what is the impact, what are the well-being kind of outcomes for the people that live in these homes. And that's the exciting bit about this, Liz. So because this is very new, in Bristol, we have stuck with that recognised national framework of measures that is very tangible and has got that credibility. But once we're in contract, we can have conversations with providers like Rehan and the team and look at what else we can start to come up with some evidence base around and what measures we can use to then demonstrate the impact. So we're mixing the very tangible and hard with the emerging, and then with the less tangible, but actually my personal view is one of the most important, which is what is the difference? You know, we're giving people homes to live in, not just a roof, you know, but as Julian said, we're looking at the whole package around community engagement and support in the community and trying to understand what's the difference. If we do things in this way as opposed to a more traditional way, so what? And, you know, my expectation is actually we will see genuine improvement, not just for the community, but also for the people that live there. And that's the bit I want to replicate, not so much the kind of the what and the how, it's the why.
I'm hoping I can get almost a one-word answer to this from probably Julian. Someone's asked, is there scope for a citywide feasibility to identify infill plots, including potential rooftop sites for this sort of development? And if so, is it already being done?
Partly is my one-word answer. So yes, there should be scope, and yes, we are looking at it, but we could probably, there's probably a degree of detail to which we could go into a bit further.
Great, thank you. There's one question that's aimed at me, although others may want to leap in. The current COVID restrictions have meant we're more of a style of working from home, which is likely to be you know, to a degree, at least a longer term change. How do you think the design of our communities will change to accommodate this? I'm not going to answer that question directly, but I think it massively speaks to the whole question of livable streets and livable places and livable cities. It's how do we design our communities so that, you know, the whole notion of 15-minute neighborhood type thing, where we're talking about the capacity for people to have what they need for their own well-being in a really local space. I think Ben touched on this earlier. You know, are we close to shops? Have we got capacity to earn a living that doesn't require huge amounts of both ecologically and humanly painful commuting? I think there is a growing recognition that we have designed our cities and our places to purely feed a huge economic machinery that creates wealth for a few rather than well-being for the many. And I think the more we understand about what it takes to create communities where people are people's well-being is the outcome, the more it will benefit all of us, but also the planet that we live on, because our consumption-based model at the moment is not doing us terribly well. That's a very big picture answer. I'm very aware of the fact that time is moving on, and I'm going to put a final question to the whole team, and I'm going to again ask for really headline answers or we will overrun. If we were back here again next year, or perhaps better 3 years time, one of my hopes for that would be we would then have some residents here singing the praises of how incredible all the things you've put in place, what impact they've had. But other than that, what one line would you like to be saying yourselves about the success and impact of this project if we're back in this space, or hopefully a physical space in 2 or 3 years time? What one line would you like to be saying about the success or impact of this project from your perspective? I'm going to start with you, Jessie.
I think success would look like young people having homes for an amount of time and being able to move on, but also that the Hope Rise project, that those young people were able to integrate with the wider community as well, and we've been able to prove the outcomes through evaluation and reporting as well.
Thank you. Julian?
I would like the residents of Hope Rise to be coming along and talking positively to the next group or groups of residents of the next Hope Rises, whatever we choose to call them. I would like them to be extolling the virtues of that scheme to future scheme residents, really.
Brilliant, thank you. Paul?
Basically, as a quick one, I would say happy homes, happy people.
That's definitely a quick one. Thank you. Jacqueline?
For me, it's legacy. It's legacy of what we're learning from what we're doing right now and how we start to replicate. So I would say collaboration, engagement, consultation, true community development with our residents who feel connected with the places that they live in.
Lovely, thanks. Mary?
I think it's learning, putting all the pieces of the jigsaw together and then seeing a whole load of more of Hope Rises in other parts of the Southwest would be brilliant for me. Yeah.
Brilliant. Rehan?
Delivering high quality zero carbon homes for social housing need has led to an upward spiral in the quality of life of the people that are living in them, because we're designing these homes for the environment and for the people, and we want those to be the positive aspects that drive people forward by it manifesting itself in improved quality of life.
Thank you. Ben, I've left you to last, not because you're the least important, but perhaps because I would like you to speak particularly from the perspective of the residents, who of course are the most important people in this, and also because we've had a last minute question come in around how we're working, or you're all working, to ensure that the residents don't feel like they're living in a kind of goldfish bowl with lots of evaluation and kind of, like a little experiment. What are we doing to support that, and what would you like to be saying in 3 years' time, or whenever we reconvene in this space?
I think in terms of the evaluation, I think we are doing it well, and we're not overloading people with it. I think that's the key thing, that it's a subtle process, so it won't feel like a goldfish bowl. I think in terms of what do I want to see out of the development, what do I hope is that we've got a group of young people that are enjoying living there, that are thriving living there, that they're doing well in all aspects of their lives. And actually, one of my big measures of success is that we see the next sort of cohort of community builders coming from the residents that have lived there already, and they've understood something about the development and have been inspired to be part of that process of building community.
Great. I've got slight goosebumps with all of those hopes for the future of this. Really, really powerful to be hearing all of your stories about how you've made this happen. I very much hope that not only do we hear from the people living in this residence of all of those positive stories you've just described, but actually that already we're getting messages from all over the country and beyond about how this project has inspired similarly innovative and courageous and people-led projects all over the place. So thank you all. I think we're just about to run out of time. I apologize to any viewers if you did put in a question we didn't get to. I think we got to most of them. So I've got a few thank yous and a bit of a wrap up. I'd like to first thank you, all of those who've tuned in. No webinar is any good at all if we're talking to ourselves. So thank you very much for being there, for your really interesting questions, and for your passion to take this out. And I get that sense from the comments that are coming up in the Q&A that people are wanting to take this and learn from it and build it elsewhere. Huge thank you to all the panelists. I'm not going to name you all because you're right there in front of us all, but thank you very much, not only for your time today, but perhaps more importantly for your vision and commitment to making this happen. Also a big thank you to the sponsor of this event, which is the Southwest Procurement Alliance. So thank you, and please pass that on to your organisation, Mary. a big reminder, of course, that this report, somebody's asked that on the Q&A as well, the report that's coming out, which is this interim learning from this process that's coming out next week, will be available on the Housing Festival site. I've had a question about whether it will also be available on the City Council's website. Can I have a nod or something from
We can do that.
Great. So, how can people find out about it? I would suggest, as ever, to look through social media. I think there's going to be lots of people talking about it next week. So please do keep an eye on all of that. And last but not least, don't forget that this is part of a much wider festival. There's so much going on, so much to learn about this project and so many others. So please do check out the Bristol Housing Festival website for more events. I'm looking, she doesn't know this, but I'm looking at Jessie to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. Perfect. But apart from a huge thank you to everyone, and take care and enjoy the rest of your Thursday.